I'm Ben Rosenfeld. I'm a junior at Kent, and I'm studying journalism. And for my project, the question I posed was, why is censorship bad for the field of journalism? So to start off, I just want to touch on what censorship is defined as. Um, and censorship is the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc. And it's stuff that is censored because it's considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or if it is considered a threat to security. Um, so nowadays, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with how censorship has kind of become a common occurrence in media and journalism today. Um, so pretty much, stuff gets taken down today when it's considered dangerous, or if it's labeled as misinformation, or if they say that it can be damaging or cause safety issues. But yeah, that's become kind of common these days. So after touching on what censorship is, I'm going to dive in more what it is in terms of in journalism, what it is. So in journalism, it pretty much includes media, so any newspapers or blogs that are written by a journalist, and especially nowadays social media apps because that's such a common way for journalists to spread, the news that they're going to touch on and things like that. And predominantly, you're going to see journalists, the social media apps that they utilize are mostly going to be like Twitter, because you can write on Twitter more so. It's not like it's not really more pictures like Instagram, but some of them are on Instagram. But I would say predominantly they're on Twitter. So the whole censorship thing in journalism kind of kicked off and became kind of a reoccurring thing during the whole COVID-19 um, issue and in the 2020 election. So that's when the widespread censoring of media and journalism kind of started to occur. Um, for a quick example, with Elon Musk's recent acquisition of Twitter, he released some documents pertaining to how um, how censorship was happening during a certain event involving in the field of politics, and kind of just released all these emails and stuff about how Twitter was censoring things that they just deemed untrue, and they deemed that it was because it went against their hacking policy, but it was never really proven that it was a hack. So they were kind of just picking and choosing what got to stay and what didn't. And one political side was definitely affected more so than the other. So that's definitely an issue. So in general, why is censorship an issue? I think it's such an issue, such a big issue, because our First Amendment right to the freedom of speech is kind of being totally disregarded and infringed upon. Um, so if journalists, journalism is all about spreading opinion and news. So if you can't spread opinion and news because it's going to get censored because the people who control the media don't agree with it, that's totally kind of going against our freedom of speech, and it's really only letting us see one side of the picture, which um, is going to it's going to make people not really have unique opinion anymore, which that's the good thing about freedom of speech. It creates a lot of discussion, which is the basis for everything. Discussion leads to decisions, and that's how things get done. So, like I stated, yeah, if censorship becomes like the norm, like in other countries where it's kind of just law that things get censored and it's accepted by the citizens because they don't really have a choice, like in China, um, the country will just become too one-dimensional, and there will be no such thing as debate and opinion anymore. Um, I truly think that obviously freedom of speech is one of the best qualities of the United States of America. It makes us really unique, and I think it's what really makes us so powerful. But if censorship takes over, that's really the start of our freedoms and just our freedoms in general being taken away. Um, there was a Stanford study that I used as one of my scholarly articles, and it stated that the media landscape in China is amongst the most regulated and restricted in the world, and China's media freedom is ranked consistently towards the bottom. So that's something that at least in my opinion, I don't ever want to be towards. I don't want us to have no freedom on the media. Um, that's just yeah. I just think that would be very bad for the country. So since I touched on the First Amendment in the previous slide, I'll go over right here what it really is. So the First Amendment is really one of the most important pieces of history because it's what makes our country so unique and powerful. Um, and the, the the part of the First Amendment that includes the freedom of speech is as follows. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Um, so that section pretty much talks about how we have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and we all have the right to gather and peacefully, protest. And those freedoms are really important because, nowadays America is kind of one of the only ones left. Well, not one of the only ones left, but definitely one of the bigger superpowers left that we have these freedoms. You look at Russia and China, and they're struggling to, be able to do things like that because they're just so controlled. Um, so specifically, why is censorship in journalism an issue? I think it's an issue, really, in any form, but it's really an issue in journalism because it's really intended for people to share their opinion and just share news to the public, no matter if it's controversial or not. Our Constitution says that, our First Amendment says that we have the right to, speak our minds. So if only the dominant views are shared, that really eliminates what, the basis of journalism. Um, but recently, according to the Pew Research Center, it was found that a third of U.S. adults, so 31%, say that they get their news from Facebook. So, with that in mind, it shows that we really need to not be censoring social media because nowadays that's like a really reliable source, or not reliable. That's a really popular source for young adults to get their news. So if you're censoring social media, where people are predominantly, trusting that they can get their news from, they're only going to see one side. They're not, a lot of times they're not going to see the truth, and that's just not good. Um, so, what do American citizens think about censorship? So, from what I found, obviously, the topic of censorship is a really popular thing right now to talk about because it's in the news every day, especially the Twitter, Elon Musk acquiring Twitter to strengthen free speech and keep that value going. That's the reason that he stated that he bought it. Um, so this is a big thing in the news right now. And again, according to the Pew Research Center, 44% of Americans think major technology companies should be regulated more than they are now, which is actually down from 56% in April of 2021. Um, so I think that shows that with the recent findings and how the government's been involved in social media, people are kind of seeing that tech companies may be a little corrupt, and they don't want the government to be involved and regulating these tech companies because maybe the government is interfering. And it's interesting because this study actually goes on to explain how throughout every political party, the Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and so on, actually all kind of have a similar view on this topic. So it's not like one side, is totally one way and one side is another way. Everybody kind of agrees that they don't really want, or just the same opinion on the topic of regulation of tech companies. How can we fix the current trend of censorship? So, in my opinion, since we don't really have direct control, because like these companies are owned by people with lifetimes worth of money. I think if people just continue to call the tech companies out for this censorship and criticize them, that's really the best thing that we can do. We don't really have control, but we are the ones that are using these services, so we're fueling the company and the apps and the media and the websites we use. So I guess if we could all somehow limit our usage, that would be one of the most effective ways to show them that most Americans don't agree with the practice of blocking and censoring what one side is saying, and maybe they would be willing to make changes, but I'm not too sure on that. I guess, and also the something one of the best things that could happen is if an issue got taken to the Supreme Court, we could see change eventually. So these are my references that I used, and these are the references for the images. But overall, just as a summary, I think that in terms of journalism and really anything, censorship is not good. It doesn't matter if I see something from something that I don't agree with. It's fine because I know that that's just the the right to free speech in America. So um, I have no problem when I see something from the other side that I don't agree with because that's just how free speech works, and it's good to have everybody's opinions out there because that's what creates discussion and leads to things getting done. When two sides might not collectively agree, they can meet in the middle. They can meet one way, or just in general, censorship is not. It's if you look at other countries and right now, there's a lot of crazy things going on, and that's because their governments can censor things and control them. And I just think that that would be a really poor direction for America to go. So hopefully, our free speech is respected and it's not limited because that's against the Constitution. But yeah, that's my presentation.